All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining so late in the day. Today I'm going to tell you a few stories about startups I launched with my friends, how we got funding, what we did wrong, and it's a talk where I tell you about failures, not necessarily everything that worked. So all the mistakes we did and how they affected us later on. I think there's some value, but in general, I aim not to scare you, but to give some inspiration. This is quite a different talk for me. I usually talk about technology and full stack development. You could see me at a tech conference last week, but I think as developers, we have an incredible chance to take our skills and actually use them, monetize them, because if you're full stack or you have friends that you can create the whole app with, you pretty much can create an MVP of a product or even working product yourself. And it's a shame not to use it, especially in pivotal times when, I don't know, there's large language models around the corner. Probably there are still some unexplored use cases. You can quickly wire up some application, give it to users, see what happens. So I encourage you to do that, and you'll see how I tried to do that with a lot of spare time during the pandemic. So as I'm going to focus on startups mostly, but from what I'm doing right now, you can see that I didn't have a successful exit, or I don't run a very successful startup. I'm an engineering manager at a cybersecurity startup from UK called Netesia. We protect APIs, protect website, we detect malicious traffic with AI. So that works pretty well. I also run one of the startups I'm going to talk about, one that still is running, but I do it after hours. And also I'm writing, I get nothing out of it, but sharing knowledge I think is a part of a senior developer journey, so I'm trying to do that. My story starts with hackathons. You know, of course, we have friends, we have some spare time, but it's sometimes hard to carve out those few hours a day or a few hours a week to work on your new product. So what we decided to do with a group of developers I know is to go to hackathons and spend 2 days and try to develop a prototype, maybe win a prize and get to know people that can fund it. So I would say hackathons, weird event, a lot of developers, unhealthy food, energy drinks, but these events change. So when you go to a hackathon right now, you actually can get a vegan salad. So I recommend that. There are also morning yoga classes on hackathons like Hack Yeah, when there are thousands of developers. But personally, I'm beyond the stage where I want to spend a weekend coding in a stadium. But this is where some of the ideas we've created were born. We went to a point where after winning few hackathons, one of my friends created a tongue-in-cheek framework called Guidelines for Hackathon Participation. So if you're focused on winning, I can share those. But basically, when we looked at those rules, we saw that these are pretty good rules of how to validate a product idea, or what does it mean that a product idea is suitable for a hackathon and to be developed. It's tangible, big enough, inspiring enough to actually interest anyone, and a few more points that we used to evaluate whatever we came up with days before hackathons or in the mornings when the hackathons kicked off. But what we quickly noticed is some of my friends were just having fun during the hackathons, and I was as well. But hackathons are organized by organizers for several reasons, and they are funded by sponsors for reasons. And those reasons are getting new ideas. So sometimes you go to a hackathon and there is this small point in rules that you give out intellectual property. Don't go to those hackathons. And sometimes it's recruitment. Companies want to see people that are enthusiastic and what they can do in days and recruit them. And some of people just want promotion, and some of them just look for products to buy and or to invest in. So we thought about this, and hey, we have a great networking opportunity. We're tired with hackathons. Let's bring some of those initiatives forward. So yeah, I gathered a team in my small apartment here in the city center, and we sat down together and asked ourselves, what do we want to do? We evolved our hackathon participation guidelines into a plan for startup development, and we started thinking about how we can actually start a company. So yeah, a lot of time spent during weekends, evenings, and developing and prototyping, even some remote work at the end of 2019. So as you can see, my friend on the small laptop screen. So that brings us to the first idea that was developed. All of the ideas I'm going to show you happened in 8 months, so we decided, let's go with it and develop an MVP, show it to users in 8 months, and that was actually all during the pandemic. So we all had a lot of spare times on our hands, and we figured, let's use this time because it's hopefully gonna be over, and it's a good time to prototype stuff. So the first one was MediaScribe, and this was born in a bank hackathon, and we figured that when you make investment decisions or company decisions, there's limited data available, especially regarding live events. So we figured, let's go and make an audio analysis tool that will watch for live streams or listen to podcasts or any media that is not immediately researchable in a text format. So TV live streams or live interviews were something we wanted to watch. And we wanted to also watch those media in bulk. So if your competitor or someone else is advertising in TV, you can measure and count how much advertising they do. You can also measure popularity of concepts. And you may think that TV is an old idea and now it's all social media. The reality is that TV still influences people. And there was a new media being more and more popular, which was podcasts. So we wanted to bring a tool that will work for those use cases. And luckily, this was a presidential election time. So we had a great use case that we presented that one Polish station, TVN, talked more about President Duda, mostly in negative terms, and TVP talked more about Trzaskowski, mostly in negative terms. When you looked at it, they weren't focused on promoting candidates related to their camp. They were focused on bashing the other candidate. And we could see relationships like that, really interesting research, applications in finance, politics, PR, marketing. But the but was that we couldn't monetize it. We couldn't find clients that will actually pay for it. We didn't have a track record of showing this tool will give you 5% increase in efficiency in this PR team. We just couldn't calculate it, couldn't convince people to doing that. And luckily, we caught an opportunity to do a pivot. So I'm going to talk about the last product on this list that was actually created as a pivot out of this one. But mostly what we've learned, technology was exciting, so we were taking live audio streams, doing transcription, doing natural language processing, and the topics were exciting itself. We could see how the society views certain topics, but being exciting wasn't enough, so we couldn't monetize it. Then there was another idea happening in the background. We went to another hackathon, which was a legal hackathon, and we engaged this time some lawyers. So I went to the hackathon not only with my software engineering friends, but also with 2 lawyers. And we had no idea what problems lawyers have. So our friends told us about the fact that when you're a young lawyer or you're an assistant in a law company, what some piece of your work is taking years old of contracts that have 40 amendments and joining them together to create a unified body of contract. And sometimes it's complicated, it's not obvious because they use natural language. So we figured, let's make a tool that does exactly that. And also gives, since it needs to read text, we're going to give additional tools that read text and advise lawyers of what to do. Mostly they suggest what is unlawful, what to watch for, and other tools. We created an MVP of that. We've won another hackathon. I actually got some photos out of it. And the tool was pretty simple. You could see a timeline on the left of what changed in the deal. You got the statements flagged that was changed, and in general, you had a whole history of document. For us, that was ridiculous to work even with that because we have Git. So, our code name for that was, reverse engineering Git for lawyers, but was a little bit ridiculous to work with. Obviously, we talked with lawyers and we were like, let's change the law, let's maybe do digital contracts. But they said that the change is so hard in the law system that probably a tool like this is going to have more success than lobbying digital contracts for the next 10 years. So we tried to do that. We got pretty far, but then many of my friends found it boring. Also, we did it a little bit on the side. We weren't really excited. We talked about selling to one of the German startups. They were interested in making it a part of their product suite. But we were doing this project and MediaScribe and another project at the same time, and it was just too much. This one just fell out. We decided that it's too much to work on this. And yeah, we just said, okay, no. And we had the least obligations with this one. So no external funding, only hackathon prize that we spent on servers and split between each other. But what I would say, it was great to work with end users that are not us and work with domain experts. I would say most of the products, when I look at launching right now and getting ideas, I try to be a customer for this product. I try to feel what it does for people. In this case, I had a recipient of that product. Our lawyers were really excited about possibilities of this tool. So that was a good part of this project. The next project we did was actually born on another hackathon that I wasn't at, but I participated in creating a startup. That's actually my favorite logo out of those. We ordered a logo for an AI company from my friend, but it turned out to be a mix of hallucinogenic mushroom and a brain, which I find cool and actually reflected preferences of one of our team members, which, I actually still want to print some merch with it as a gift souvenir from the past. So the idea was there was a lot of funds available during the pandemic, and we figured we, in general, want to build an AI company that analyzes text. We have some experience from previous tools. Let's jump on the train. Let's try to create something useful to people. Maybe some portals will buy a tool that validates information posted by users and tracks path of this information through social media. So we pretty much created something that scrapes internet and can detect singular tweets that then create a snowball and maybe end up as a legit press articles. We created text similarity algorithms using technology similar to what is now in large language models. We're embedding text in large vector spaces and using similarity algorithms to find the text. Now, the technology we've used here is used as a backend of knowledge bases that custom ChatGPT deployments that people create can access. So good learning experience, but that's another failure, the third on that list. So we ended up with a very simple UI, but that was the prototype. Then we had another version of the UI, and actually we had a browser extension that people used. I think 10,000 people actually used it, so that was pretty cool. But the server cost for GPU was just too much, and we couldn't justify running the tool anymore. But we got a pretty good grant from the city of Lodz, and that was 25K USD equivalent, and we spent it to develop language model related tech, which was really useful. Yeah, so we ended up with a pretty nice website, and the tool was available there. We had a great graph visualizations, but we ended up with a simple list and scoring. So that was actually pretty fun, and we tested it for different information. And actually, we created an internal query for the most ridiculous informations. We had some metrics for that, and it was really fun to read, at least. We talked with some big companies to buy it, but then in the end, they were mostly interested in media attention around pandemic. So even if they talked about possibly doing a tool like that, they weren't interested in seeing it through. So for the learnings from this one, again, good ideas are not possible to be monetized, and quite frankly, there was a lot of development around that happening. Right now on social media, you usually get a marking that something is fake or possibly fake. People implemented it, but even though we were first in many areas, then of course big companies wanted to have that in-house. I think also we saw that spreading awareness is important. We didn't put enough effort in marketing. We focused mostly on tech. And this was the first project we saw were compounding value of our knowledge. All of the startups you can see and all of what my friends are doing is related to text and text analysis. So we are doing stuff around that. There was another project that originated from that. This time we figured, okay, let's maybe not focus on profit as much. We went to a hackathon that's focused on accessibility. And we've created a tool that will, so the idea is if you are someone with hearing impairments, you probably cannot listen to this talk, but also when you go to a bar when the football game plays, or there's any other thing playing in a public place, or you're at a friend's house, people want to watch a movie, you have sometimes no way to turn on subtitles. Of course, now in most places you have, but that's not the case for live streams and for live events. And that's where exclusion largely happens as well, because it's not about pre-recorded set of movies that have good subtitles. It's about participating in public discourse. So we've created a live subtitle TV tool that worked a little bit like Shazam. So you were in a, let's say with a football game, because that's a pretty powerful example, you are in a pub, you turn on the app, we detect which TV and which game is playing, and then we're doing transcription on the server with a lower latency, so we get audio before you usually get it, and then we serve subtitles for you. You can just set your phone in front of you, and we'll try to provide you synchronized subtitles to what's going on the screens around you. Which this wasn't on-device transcription, this was in the cloud, so the transcription could be a really high quality. And we actually got a quite nice government grant, and we weren't focused on success as much because this IP went out to public domain and being reused later, and the proof of concept was used by different organizations, but we still tried to make it happen. We also got a huge cloud grant from Google Cloud, so we could do a lot of stuff with compute. But one interesting thing about this app was that we worked weekly with a set of people with hearing impairments. So we had like a group of 10, and each week we had a demo of the next iteration of the product with them. And what I loved about it is that's the first time I worked with a real focus group, and we did true agile. We developed a product for them every single week, and they were playing with it every single week and giving us real feedback. So the whole development team sat through those meetings. We had 2 sign language interpreters for people to be able to talk both ways, which was a really interesting and humbling experience in that. After this project, in more and more of areas, when I code a front end, I add accessibility features because I talked and interacted with people that actually need them. So yeah, we created an app. It worked pretty well, but then there was a lot of stuff happening at the same time, and we tried to pair with some organizations that would maybe buy subscriptions for their users. We tried to get funding to maybe provide this for free for people, but there was no way to monetize it, to fund it in a way that would make this sustainable. Maybe someone will pick it up. The IP is there in the hands of government. Maybe someone will do that. But what we also did is we saw a growing number of features in mobile phones. So live transcription, you can pretty much turn on transcription for everything that's happening on your phone, now on iPhone and Android. And those accessibility feature development ramped up around the time where we started developing it. So at every weekly or every daily meeting, we were talking about the fact that, Google brought new feature that helps those people. Are we really relevant? So that was a little bit discouraging. Those workshops, as I mentioned, were life-changing, great experience to work with end users every single week. But then we came back to a problem that we had with Pacman, which was pretty much just doing too much at the same time. This is all in the span of 8 months. I spent so much time coding, but also creating marketing materials. It was becoming unmanageable. So yeah, that's another part, Media Plus. And if you're wondering, it's Media Plus to fit the brand awareness of Polish government. We're using public funding, so that's plus after the program names. Okay, and that's another failed startup, but probably very interesting for me because I came back to the legal help area, but this time I did it without the original team for the past few startups. It started with me being a guest in a podcast, and the podcast was about like future of tech and future of legal organizations, and I participated in it because I created the original Pactum Manager software. So what happened is we saw problems with using legal help. When I was a beginner software engineer, I was handed very long contracts by my employers, and I didn't know anyone that knows legal stuff. I didn't have contacts for lawyers. I had no idea how much it costs. And then when I learned, and when we talked more and more with friends, we saw some dangerous non-compete agreements in the contracts. We saw some stuff that you just shouldn't sign. I have several friends that were trying to be models and signed contracts that were really harmful to them and made them scared to quit when they should have quit. But also much more serious stuff like losing property, lawsuits, and people are just not using lawyers because they are scared of the cost, and also the process is completely non-transparent. So we figured, okay, let's see if there's a platform for joining those lawyers. And it all started, I went to the podcast. There was a guy running a law agency. There were two of my friends were interviewers, not really friends, acquaintances from previous startup work. And we figured, okay, let's do something together. So I joined the team of people that were much older than me and specialized with sales, which was really interesting to me because in the previous startups, I didn't have the selling power. I didn't know how to go to market with those startups. So in this one, I was the sole technology person at the beginning, and I had a support from product people, business development managers. So I figured, okay, that's an easy path to market. Let's go. And so we created this platform. We called it TAMI. The goal was to provide transparent pricing, democratize legal services, and also empower lawyers from smaller cities not in the axis, Gdańsk, Warsaw, Krakow, but also from other cities to get clients. Because I don't know if you know, but it's as a young lawyer, it's really hard to get a job, and the pay is very, very low, and lawyers know how to avoid minimum pay and then other laws. So you pretty much sometimes have to invest in having an internship in a law company. So we created an app. We went with Gold, and we got a small help from the acceleration program. The equivalent of money was maybe 10K USD, and the services they provided, they gave us accounting, they bought a designer for us, But in general, we also invested some of our own money to pay another developer to work with me. And this went fairly far. We worked with lawyer organizations around Poland. We got many people initially signing up. We got initial customers that weren't individual customers, but we contacted some groups of small companies that would love to use it for their company help, because we figured that by getting B2B contracts, we can do better. We had a deal on the table for white labeling this platform in order for some law services provider to provide this to customers. And we also had someone providing legal services as a benefit to employees that could use it as a white label platform for themselves. So business-wise, it was looking very good. But at some point, we tried to apply it for public funding. And that pretty much killed us, because the program was very good. You could get 1 million PLN, 250K USD for that. But we spent 2 months filling in the form, and we created like a master's thesis on our business, 70 pages of business plans and tables, and I was engaged in doing that instead of coding as much. And because we focused on funding so much, we didn't focus on bringing this to market, and we had customers waiting for it. So we made the mistake of basically not believing that we can bring this platform to life ourselves. And we still don't know if that would have helped, because for a platform like this to work, you need a lot of customers and a lot of lawyers to participate. And now current platforms like Uber or sales platforms, they have a lot of users, and companies like Uber, they bleed money pretty much. So it's a very hard business. And yeah, so there's a lesson. Just bring your product to market. Don't focus on fundraising as well. And we just knew we had a few months left without funding, so we decided to close the whole idea. I would say that was the first startup I actually hired someone for. So this was really good. I hired a friend from a previous company to work with us on a contractual basis. And that really sped up development. What you saw on mockups was an actual React app, and this was pretty close to being actually usable. And I would also say that from what I saw engaging with customers at the beginning, really good to see end users again. So I took learnings from Media Plus and told my guys that I want to sit in a room with end users as soon as I can, because that just informs the right features to implement. So the last startup I'm going to tell you about that is actually not failed. I told you about 5 of 6. It's Sentimatic, and that is a pivot from the first one I told you about, which is MediaScribe. We had experience with transcribing audio, and we talked with customers, and one of them was an insurance provider. And this insurance provider told us that previous year, they lost multi-million contract with a company that had several thousands of employees that they insured at this company. And those employees were calling the insurer with problems, but they were increasingly unhappy, cursing on agents. And the volume of those calls increased, and they were reporting those problems to HR at their company that was a client of this insurer, but this information wasn't stored anywhere in the company. So they told us about this problem, and they were like, okay, you're clearly good at analyzing audio and content of audio streams. Can you do something like that for us? So we figured, okay, we cancel MediaScribe, let's do a pivot. We got an investor because we needed that, and we needed a large organization to stand behind us if we want to sell to banks and large insurers. And we created a tool. We do content analysis and summarization. We look for sentiment in text, but also in how you speak, which was, I think, at the moment and even now is something that not a lot of people do. We can detect irony and people being annoyed, even if they speak with nice words. You can say very good with a very aggressive voice and being really aggressive. So that was differentiating us, and that was exciting enough in data science terms for me and my friends to engage in it. So we aimed the product at call centers of big companies like banks, and we figured we can give a lot of benefit, but trying to track customer sentiment over time, and actually reporting bad occurrences, not only counting on the fact that an agent will report them, because they don't. Employees of call centers are usually overworked, they're swamped with phones. If any of you worked at such place, it's a very hard work, and you just don't have time to note down everything that happened in a ticket or in the note from the meeting. So we figured, let's automate that. And there's a dashboard we provide to our clients to track sentiments customer over time. We have a view of their conversation. We score conversations from 0 to 100 in terms of sentiment and business implications, and we can track keywords. We can see if everything is going well, and there are some phrases that companies really don't want to hear, like "I want to end the contract with you." So in general, that works pretty successfully. My surprise was that companies are really not focused on tracking us. Most of the people I talked about, they weren't interested in hearing if you have cat in the background in order to upsell you cat food later on. They were interested in actually improving the customer quality. So I felt pretty good about listening to creating an AI tool that actually listens to this call. With this one, we gave pretty much a lot of equity to our investor, and that's an ongoing thing, which has its pros and cons. In one thing, I get compensated for working on it, but I don't have full control. We have controls that don't allow our investor to vote us out and do stuff without us. But in general, they have majority of shares. But this allowed us to invest a little bit and reach big customers, but also was limiting us in terms of additional funding. Also, negotiations with big customers. If you work in a big company in a managerial role, or if you work at a company and you hear your manager, yeah, we're almost closing a deal with this big organization, and you hear this for 6 months, for a year, that's because that's how big organizations move. You get to know one person there, you bring it closer to fruition, then this person goes away, you lose your contact in there, but there are still people interested in using this product in a company. So building a deal with a bank can take 2 years. So this is still a challenge, but we run currently multiple POCs with customers, and it's looking pretty promising. Also, that taught me a little bit about pivoting. So MediaScribe, nice idea, unsellable, Sentimatic, also interesting, but much more marketable and can be much more profitable. So, but we're in a year where we're really testing waters with it, and this will be a year where we'll decide what happens with the product next. I actually, when I prepared this talk, I didn't have anything else, but I would say try to have some fun with AI. 2 weeks ago, I created a new product idea, and the stuff I told you at the beginning, just sit down alone and try to develop something. I'm trying to embody that as well. So 2 weeks ago, I launched ChatGPT and figured, let's learn how to do Swift UI apps for macOS. Let's make a desktop app, and let's make something that will make me the smartest person in the room. So I actually created something that transcribes meetings for me, creates notes, and creates action points for me and sends them to my note-taking system. So we're at a point where you can speed up a lot of development with AI, and as a developer, you can jump through languages. So I would highly recommend that. So I'm still, it's not 6 startups at the same time, but I'm trying to do a little bit on the side to keep stuff interesting. That's what it looks like right now. So if you don't know UI and if you don't know new languages, just launch ChatGPT and play around. So in general, to summarize learnings from all of those startups, to give you some takeaways, I think hackathons, great way to test ideas, learn new skills, meet co-founders, meet investors, but there are limitations. You just create a lot of ideas, you spend a lot of times, and you don't sleep as well. So sleep is important. Don't do as many as we did, which is like 10 over a year. We did a 2-day hackathon a month, and there's enough of those in Poland actually to live like this. building at the same multiple startups at the same time, challenging and distracting mostly. It's good to have ideas. If you read Austin Kleon's book, Still Like an Artist, I think that applies to developers. He says, don't give any of yourself away. And I find it applicable to my work. I'm a generalist in many ways, but doing a lot of stuff at the same time is tempting, but sometimes maybe we could use some more focus. And finding the right co-founders is crucial for the startup. So I had a great team, but in some of those ideas, we had problems with co-founders. We needed to say goodbye to one person, and this was painful and legally troubling. And also, you know, with people, you can do a lot of good stuff, but also there's an effect of the group encouraging each other to dive into bad idea that you probably shouldn't continue doing. And lastly, launching fast and getting feedback is important. So some of the startups I did here, like the legal tech startup, or maybe a Temi, another legal tech startup, these should have been in customers' hands way earlier. So if you have something that works or even doesn't work, show it to people, work with them. Also funding, I wouldn't get some of the funding I did get for those startups, because this is just trouble. It gives you some comfort. You can pay for cloud, you can pay for GPUs to run your AI models, but I think I would prefer to invest some of this money myself at this point. And learning from failure is valuable, but I don't think some of those startups had to exist. I think they taught me a lesson, taught some of my friends a lesson, great piece of knowledge, but not all failures are good. I think I could do without at least one or two of them. So yeah, building startups, hard but rewarding. Collaboration, great stuff, but has its caveats. And if you see, I can tell you a lot of stuff what not to do, as I told you today, but every startup works out in a different way. Every business model is slightly different, so there's no key for success. That was the talk. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you feel inspired. I'm going to take some questions, and good luck with your own initiatives. Thank you.